Am I audible? Okay, nice. So how many of the online students will be attending the answer writing sessions offline? Please type in the chat box. I just want to see the numbers. Okay, so let's start with what we So what we discussed yesterday, we started corporate governance. Did you come yesterday? You were online. At times you watch online, at time offline. Huh? Yeah, same region. Shreya, contagious disease. No? Contagious excuse. Okay, so we started the discussion of corporate governance, and in that we discussed that it is basically when we define corporate governance, we have to define in the broadest manner possible. It is about structure, it is about policies, it is about rules and regulation. Basically, whatever that helps that the company should be governed in the best interest of every stakeholder, not just shareholder. That is what we need to understand. And when we are talking about stakeholders, who are stakeholders? Shareholders are important stakeholders, then the consumers, then employees, then competitors, the government also, society, yes, society in general, and suppliers. Suppliers, I think we did not discuss suppliers. Suppliers are also important stakeholders, because whatever the organization is doing, various inputs are provided by the suppliers. For example, talk about this digital board. I'm sure Vajiram and Ravi not manufacturing this. Yes, so this has been sourced from some suppliers only. Understood? And the company need to be fair to the supplier as well. What is the fairness for suppliers? The fairness is that they should pay them timely. If they have booked some order, then payment should be done timely. And the supplier should also provide qualitative services. For example, if you are having, let's say, a food processing company, or you are running a restaurant simply, then of course you will not be growing all the vegetables, paneer, milk, whatever the inputs yourself. You will be getting them from suppliers only. So you have ethical responsibility for the suppliers that you should pay them promptly, and also they also have ethical responsibility that the inputs that they are delivering to you should be qualitative, because you yourself cannot do that. So that is the ethical perspective with respect to suppliers, and I think one thing that we can understand from the perspective of example of Ishidharan was that various contractors worked without payment for months. They were suppliers of the various services because the organization was treating them very fairly. Under the leadership of Ishidharan, the organization was treating them very fairly, and because of that, so I am telling you that being ethical to supplier also is not just ethical imperative, or it does not help you ethically, but also economically. Yes, so that is the perspective that the organization, when Ishidharan was working, they were starved of funds because of Harshad Mehta scam and everything, and they were not getting funds. So one aspect was that the suppliers, since they stopped working because you are not releasing payment on time, that is fair also, and that will ultimately lead to the delayed project, and that will have cost overruns. But suppliers worked without payment for months because they believed in the credibility of Ishidharan, and because earlier, from before that, they were being paid regularly. Understood? So again, the same argument that being ethical in the context of corporate governance is not just their duty, or it will help them, but it also make economic sense. Can you just understand this aspect, that whatever argument I am giving, ultimately I am deriving that towards economy, and that is what you also need to understand, because the biggest conflict that will be there whenever you are solving the case study for corporate governance, any case study you see, any case study by the UPSC, the conflict will always be between economy and ethics. Any case study, even the case study for pharmaceutical industry that is asked this year, they are resorting to shortcut and everything, that is economy versus ethics. Similarly, earlier case study, when you have noticed some wrongdoing for the same thing, the reputed food company, the case study was there in which it was selling the rejected export products in the domestic market. So that is again the case of economy versus profit. Then the company, one case study, I'm telling you all the case study, and all of you are looking at me as if you are hearing for the first time. So another case study was in which one person the securing tender is very, very important for that company, because otherwise they have to shut down the whole supply chain, and his own job will be at stake. So basically that case study was also with respect to whether they can get, the one person was there who was promising that he will get the tender. This case study has been asked last year. One employee was there, prospective person was there, and who said that if you recruit me, I will help you in getting the tender, because I have some confidential information, and that tender will help the company economically, because they need some funds to survive. Otherwise, they have to shut down the whole production line, and the manager who was making that decision, his own career will also be at stake. So can you see, if we just have the broader perspective, at the macro perspective, all the case studies are same only, It is just, the UPSC is just clearing more and, it is making more and more layers of ethical dilemma, but just by making the ethical case study, by making this more and more complex. For example, in this case study, the person whom the company has approached, or who has approached the company that if you recruit me, then I will get you the tender, Plus, they have included another dilemma, that your job, the manager who will be making the decision, your job is also on the line. So basically, they are just creating the dilemma for you. Understood or not? Understood? So basically, every case study is that only, Ultimately, in corporate governance, it boils down to that only, because various corporate organizations think that if they act ethically, it will lead to the cost overruns. Understood? And that is why they should save cost. And that is what you need to argue, that being ethical is not just your duty, it is not just imperative, but also necessary for your own economic survival. And that is why every argument that we are making, ultimately we are driving towards economy only. And the question was that only CSR makes companies more profitable. Understood or not? Okay, so that is a perspective of suppliers. Environment as entity and stakeholder, society only wishes, yes, you can write environment in that respect, but ultimately society only. And when you are writing society, then it includes environment and everything. Understood? So now let us look at the other aspect. This we have discussed, right? Competitors we have discussed. Society. So now, the next important thing is that, yes, we will be responsible to something that is more tangible, like employees. Yes, we will be more ethical towards customers, because otherwise, we will lose their trust and everything. We have to be ethical towards shareholders, because ultimately they are the owners, But then the corporates will say that why we should be, why we should care for the society, because that is very broad in nature, what we need to focus on, that this institute or whatever I am running, it should run profitably, How it is my concern that whatever happening in society, should actually make me move, that I should do something for them. What is the rationale here? So that is the perspective that we are going to discuss, that what makes companies responsible, or they have their ethical duty towards society. What are those arguments? Understood? So that is what we are discussing. And one of the important aspect is, the citizenship is, for example, talk about citizenship, the concept of citizenship. All of us are citizen by birth, and the Constitution has given that citizenship to us. And when we are citizen, then of course we have certain responsibilities also, we have certain rights also. So our citizenship is created by Constitution of India. Understood or not? On the other hand, corporations are created by society, because any corporation, the consumers come from society only. The inputs, raw material, it is also coming from the society only. Employees are coming from the society only. Understood? No one has right in that context that, that the corporate the structure should exist, So that is not there. Everything that you are getting from society only. I will give you another example. The companies, let's say they are having a developmental project, they are having a development project, and for that development project, they have to ensure some deforestation has to be done. And of course, EIS, IA do everything, and you find that overall it will be beneficial only if we go ahead with this. Then all of you, I think you know this only, then when we go for deforestation of a particular area, one important aspect is that we go for afforestation in some alternate area, and we are supposed to pay some net present value of the forest and everything. Understood? So that is there. So basically, we are mitigating the cost by planting, a separate forest in lieu of what we are, deforesting actually. Understood? But I am asking you whether whatever cost we are paying, will we ever be able to pay the real cost? I mean, how can we perhaps quantitatively calculate the value of forest. For example, any forest, Dandakaranya forest or any Uttarakhand forest, those forests have existed for centuries. And for that ecosystem, to become that kind of ecosystem, it requires ages actually, a lot of time it requires. Forest is not just collection of trees, that if you are planting a collection of trees at one place, it will equivalent to forest only. 100, for example, 100 square kilometer of forest is not equivalent to 1 square kilometer patches of plantation in different places. Very clear or not? For example, समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा, आपका फेस ऐसे ही रहते हैं. Okay, so basically it is not equivalent. Forest as an ecosystem is very different. So basically society will always be in debt. Similarly, you give the example of natural resources. A drinking water bottle company is there, and talk about Bisleri and all such companies. Of course they will be paying something because they are drawing water. Can they ever pay the true price to the government also? Because water is something that takes a lot of time to percolate and to go to the groundwater. And if they are withdrawing that water, because they are withdrawing the water, I think you would have heard of it, in various places, that various companies that withdraw water, at much faster rate than it was required or desired, and that actually led to the drawdown of the water table, and then ultimately the locals were suffering because they do not have water. Understood? Because all these companies, they have lot of technological resources, very heavy pump they use, and they will just simply pump out lot of water, and that will make the locals around the company suffer. Understood? A similar question were there this year in the context of water management. One case study was there. The industry, there are restrictions on the farmers and other people for the water conservation. But industry, they also are taking water. Understood or not? So basically all I am saying is, even when we are operating, we can never truly pay the price. We can never truly pay the price. We will always remain indebted to the society. Corporate, I'm talking about from the perspective of corporates only. They will always remain indebted to the society. That is what they need to understand, that we will always be in debt. For example, we, the citizen of our country, we actually are in always debt with respect to the state, with respect to the idea of patriotism is that only, because we can perhaps never pay, all of you, I can presume that all of you are not paying income tax for now, because you are here. So if you are not paying any taxes in the context of income tax only, then still you are enjoying law and order and everything. Yes? Understood? So basically we are always in debt. We can never perhaps pay for that fully. Never. Understood? So that is why, we should have that sense of gratitude for the nation. That is the rationale of patriotism also. Similar way, corporation will also never be able to pay, in the actual cost term to the society. Understood? So that is why they should also understand that they have certain ethical responsibility for the society. Another aspect is that if suppose in a society, a society is not having a lot of human capital. You understand human capital? Their skills, their healthcare, and society is plaguing with malnutrition, MMR is high, IMR is high, everything is high in terms of the healthcare parameter, and similarly skills levels are not there, crime rate is also high. Then the corporation cannot say that it does not concern us. It definitely concerns them, because if crime rate is high, then how will you invest there? Will you invest there? Will any corporation invest there? So of course they have stake there. They have stake that they should ensure, economic stake also, that they should ensure that law and order should be maintained, that the state should actually they should do their duty. Similarly, the human capital should be good enough, because the citizens with good health and good education will make better customers and better employees. Understood or not? Because if they have good human capital, they will be earning also, and that means you will have wider customer base. Understood? And if they have good human capital, they will also be far more productive employees also. And that is why when you hear the report that 65% of the engineers are not employable because they do not have real skills. So all these companies who are operating in the country, they must be concerned by this fact, because ultimately they are going to the placement, because they are getting the recruitments from the colleges, and it should concern them, because if the skill gap is there in the context of higher education, then they have to pay for that by having more and more training cost. Understood? And that is how it makes economic sense for them also, that they should be worried about the human capital of this country. Understood? And that is the responsibility they have towards society, that they should ensure wider socio-economic development in the society. Understood? So basically crime rate, human capital, everything, the fates are intricately linked. I will give you another example. You talk about environment. You talk about environment. Now the companies which are operating in Delhi, for long if they just say that we do not care about environment, because environment is something that has to be managed by government or others, not us, then don't you think there is a direct economic impact? Because when the environmental pollution is severe, the court will order or the government will order that these and these industry will be shut, for these, this much period of the time, because the AQI level is very poor. So there is direct economic cost for these companies. We talk about construction industry as a whole. If it simply says that we don't care about environment, how does it concern us? It definitely concerns them, because in the moments of such crisis, they will be asked that they should shut their operation for a few weeks, and that will have economic cost for them. Cost overruns will be there. So environment, you are invested in environment. Similarly, you talk about extreme climatic events. In extreme climatic event, what is happening? You are getting droughts, you are getting floods, and it will impact what? Company operation also. Because ultimately, if you are in food processing business, then the raw materials, their prices may just skyrocket, because there is a drought in the region or there is a flood in the region. Entire crop has vanished. Any food company you talk about, it will have of course, the McD does not cultivate tomatoes themselves. If suppose, for hypothetical example, the area which are majorly producing tomatoes, if that that part is gone, then what will happen? It will lead to the inflation. Yes, so environment will always inflict economic cost on you, even though you believe that environment does not have economic value. That is what you need to understand. Prerna has given some very good fact that cost of pollution is 3% of India's GDP. That is a very good argument. And that is what you also need to write in your corporate governance answer. You will see that a gender parity, the one aspect is there that if we just make male and female wages equal, then it will add to, I think, some percentage of GDP. I'm forgetting the name, the percentage, that it will add to this much percent to the GDP growth. So that is direct economic impact of treating employees fairly. So that is what you need to write. These are the kind of arguments that make a lot of sense to the examiner also when he's evaluating your answer, that you are truly understanding that being ethical will pay you also. You at least corporate organizations. Understood? Anyone remember that fact? I'm surprised that many of you don't, that if we have male and female or labor force participation rate is equal, that this much percent of GDP will rise. 27% GDP will rise. That is a fact. I'm not recalling the 2.5%. Oh, सब लोग guess कर रहे हैं क्या? 27%. Yes. So I think Tommy is saying 21%. So more than 20%. Basically, so simply if you just treat your employees fairly, because that is the bare minimum you are expected to do, you will have economic benefit also. And that is what you need to write in corporate governance. Understood? Understood? So that is what, and then taking care of their externalities. What are externalities? Externalities are basically consequences of what you are doing, environmental footprint, for example. Now the electronic industry, cannot say that we should not care about the electronic waste or the carbon footprint that our product is leaving on the planet. They have to be more ethical and more responsible for what they are doing. And that is why the EPR, extended producer responsibility, that is there, is an extension of their social responsibility towards the environment. Because they must take care. You talk about plastic pollution, microplastics. We are having so much of microplastic in ocean. Lot of plastic pollution is there in the ocean. And that is why all these plastic producing companies, they also share some responsibility at how they are ensuring that they are adopting green practices. So basically, when the organization is operating, if it just think from the narrow perspective of short-term benefit, that we can perhaps cut down on some cost by not indulging in, buying back of the electronic waste and something like that, or reducing our carbon footprint, then in the long run, it will harm them economically only. Because ultimately what will happen? Global warming, climate change, everything will ensure that there will be environmental cost on their operation. Understood or not? So that is what you need to understand, that they must take care of their externalities, whatever they are doing. And one of the externalities is inequality also. That if you are paying very different amount of money that we have discussed yesterday, then also it will have externalities and something that in the long run will harm you together. Entire market economy, because there will be recession, people will not have. You talk about this, I think there was this report that lot many cars are simply buying, simply lying in the stockyard unsold. Why? Because people do not have capacity to buy them. You have produced so many cars and people do not have capacity to buy them. So that is what, they must take care of the countries and corporates, they have a lot of power in terms of their access to government regulators, and that is why that responsibility, 80,000 crore inventory, yes, it's huge. And that is why responsibility must correspond with the power. And ultimately, any corporation is operating within the society, so it must respect the traditions and the customs of the society. Volkswagen shut down 3 plants. So see, now this news of Volkswagen shutting down the 3 plants, it is basically direct economic impact. I mean, if you cannot see that how it is harming you economically also, then you are only blind. Understood? So that is what we need to argue when we are writing, that why we should have CSR, why we should have ethical responsibility, or why we should think beyond just economics in the context of society. That is why, because ultimately it makes economic sense for you also in the long run. Understood? So another argument is that they must respect the tradition and customs of the customers only, of the society in which they are operating. Understood? So basically, ultimately, that is how they must be actually, responsible for the society. Then let us see how they are responsible for regulators. In the environment, the regulators are also important stakeholder. There is a lot of noise coming from the mic. Please see क्या हो रहा है ये? Not audible? हाँ तो रही है कुछ. Pakistan New Mall was looted as a result of social poverty. So that's a very great example, Udit. Very nice, because it was looted as a result of social poverty. And simply see, if there is extreme poverty anywhere, it's threat to justice everywhere. Understood? It is like that. So if you are having a lot of inequality, lot of poverty, then ultimately it will hurt you. That is what you need to understand. So that's a great example of this. Yes. अभी वॉइस ठीक हो गया? जो डिस्टर्बेंस आ रहा था ऑनलाइन वालों, क्या बोला किसी ने यहाँ पे, क्या बोला? एसी चले गए ना, आई थिंक सुन के एसी का आवाज नहीं था वो, तो यहाँ से यहाँ कैसे आएगा? हे भगवान. Okay, so basically now let us discuss another important stakeholders that are regulators. That that why all these companies should hear regulators, why should they abide by the regulations. Understood? So we have many regulators in the context of banking. There is regulator named, अरे ये भी नहीं बोलोगे, prelims देने का हक नहीं है आपको. Yes, so it is RBI. In the context of secured stock market, everything, SEBI is there. Yes, so basically we have different regulators for different sectors. Understood? Now the question is that why we should hear to them. Why we should hear to them? Basically the regulators. So because again, A, it is our ethical duty to do that, and B, it makes economic sense. Always talk about economy, because that is what corporations are existing for. That is what you need to understand. If you have to increase the quality of your argument, that is the argument. So, what is the job of regulator? What is the job of RBI? The job of the RBI is that it should ensure that the market forces are operating, in as much freedom as is possible. It has to prevent market failure. What is market failure? Market failure is when there is systematic risk to the market. For example, anti-competitive practices are there. Then the market will not, market is not functioning basically. You are not allowing demand and supply to operate very freely. Or negative externalities, disturbance is there. Please see, there is some disturbance in the mic. I think you have to wait. Voice breaking. Okay, the concerned person is coming, so I think we'll just 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, we will start. Okay. Let me just speak to offline students. I think so. Where were we? You're talking about regulators. So basically, the point is that why they should be, concerned about the regulations. Because the job of the regulator is to ensure that the market forces are acting freely, and they need to prevent market failure. So what is market failure? For example, insider trading will lead to the market failure. If suppose insider trading become a norm, in a way that every company, have certain employees which is passing through the information to the people, and on mass level it is happening, that insider trading is happening, then will the retail investors not lose the trust in the stock exchange? Will they ever? Not audible? What are you saying? Am I not audible? Vishes? Am I not audible? I am audible, Abhaji. Please look at your end. So basically, it will lead to the breakdown of the trust of the people in the market itself. That insider trading is, operating here, and that is why we should invest. So that is the job of regulator, to ensure that such anti-competitive practices, are not there. To ensure that the consumers are fairly treated. What is the job of Competition Commission of India? To reduce, to curb anti-competitive practices, so that market forces can be maintained, and also the regulators comes to the rescue also. Various, one of the term that is there in the economy is domestically systematically important banks. So how many banks are there which are domestically systematically important? Oh, which three banks? SBI, HDFC and ICICI. So what does it mean? Domestically systematically important bank. What does it mean? It simply means that if suppose these bank goes down, then they will take a lot of people with them. It simply means that it will have huge repercussions to the country as a whole, and that is why RBI as a regulator, or the government, just in broader sense we talk about government, it has taken responsibility that we need to watch for them, and basically in case they are in certain trouble, then it may just be required that you help them also. Understood? So if regulator or government is coming to your rescue in the time of crisis, then what it will demand? What it will demand? It will demand that you should abide by the regulations, that you should not indulge in riskier practices, that you should have proper risk management or sound corporate governance strategies. And that is why your lending practices has to be sound, and that is why the prompt corrective action framework, so many regulations that they have put in place to ensure that the market forces they are operating, and the likelihood of these companies going down become very less. Another thing is, now all of us are depositing our money in the bank. Yes, why we are depositing our money in the bank? Why we are not having in the form of cash? Because the very first simple is that it is easy, and it gives you interest. The very basic principle is it gives you interest. Cash will not give you any interest. That is at the very fundamental level. We can just discuss that. Now, when we are depositing that money with the bank, what is it that is making us believe that a bank will not run away with your money? No, so many banks are coming up. Yes, so many finance banks are there, small banks are there. They are coming, and many of you are depositing money there also, because they are giving you so many attractive rates of fixed deposit. Then why it is that you are putting money there? What is making you trust these banking corporations? Yes, because that there is some regulator which is taking care of your interest. Earlier if you talk about my father, he will say, don't put money in private bank. So he does not trust private bank at all. He does not know about domestically systematically important bank. That at least you can trust HDFC and ICICI for that matter. But he's like, trust government bank. So basically he is trusting government bank, but I think we can trust private bank also. But why we are trusting private bank? Because again, they are regulated by the RBI. We believe in RBI, that is ensuring that our money will be safe. And that trust only comes, and the benefit is taken by banks only, and that is why new consumers they are getting, because they trust that they will give their money back when it is required. Because they believe in the regulator. They don't believe in the bank actually. They believe in the regulator. Another thing is that, there's a corporation in the government, it has some insurance, up to 5 lakh of rupees is insured. Up to 5 lakh of rupees is insured. So that insurance is again done to protect or to give you some comfort that up to this much amount of money, you can put in, and it will be insured against bank failure also. So if state is giving you that much of comfort, then because that comfort is given to a consumer, and because of that the comfort is passed on to banks also, because then only they are getting the fund from the consumers, then you should abide by the regulations. Understood? So it makes economic sense that if you are abiding by all the regulations, then perhaps people will trust you more with their money. Understood? So that is the job of regulator, to ensure that the market economy is functioning properly. And that will only be possible, when they are abiding by all these sound rules and regulations. Understood? So that is there. They have to abide by, and it makes economic sense for them also that if they are abiding by the regulations and everything, then yes, you will put money there. Okay. Then ultimate thing is that we have to rely on the ethical source of guidance or the commitment of the corporations in terms of that they will be fair to all the stakeholders, because ultimately there is a limitation of laws. Whatever law government can make, there will still be loopholes, and ultimately the same argument that after law you require ethical commitment also to the regulations to ensure that they are followed in letter and spirit, and that you are fair to all the stakeholders. So no matter how stringent laws, rules and regulations are made by government and regulators respectively, there will always be scope of manipulation. And that is why the TT shopping that is there, everything, round tripping of money that happens, in the context of FIIs and everything, So ultimately there will always be loopholes in the law, and that is why you require, sound ethical commitment to the corporate governance in spirit also, and that is why. So ultimately all of us can agree that the company basically, of course, it can go towards capitalism, but it should be more of a form of compassionate capitalism, and it should take care of the people, planet and profit. It should not just mind that its job is to earn profit only. It should be people, profit and planet basically environment perspective, and then people and then profit. So that is where it should operate. Just like legal, ethical, effective in the context of ethical dilemma that we discussed, here we should operate in the context of people, planet and profit. That is what you need to understand. And this corporate citizenship basically means that only that just like citizenship, we have certain fundamental duties. Similarly, corporations also have certain fundamental duties. So have all of you understood that so far with respect to different stakeholders, that why the company or the corporation needs to be fair to them, because it makes economic sense also. Understood? This part all of you have understood. And this part, there are the limitation of laws. Harshad Mehta scam, for example, it was there. The earlier Satyam scam was there. All these scams were manipulation of laws, rules and regulations only. And after that only government stand on the regulations. But before that, and still, there are loopholes. Perhaps there is a scam that is waiting to be uncovered because there is a loophole in the rules and regulations. Understood? So that is there, So all of you may note it now. Corporate citizenship means just like you are a citizen of this country and you have certain citizen duty. Similarly, corporates also have certain duties. That is corporate citizenship. It depends. For example, if you are a Joy Loka or the company are dealing with jewelry, and then the diamond that you are sourcing, for example, then there are various unethical practices that are there, and those diamonds are called blood diamonds. So that is what perhaps you should look forward to, that the material that you are getting, it should not be a result of such unethical practices. So that is there. And that is why, when we are talked about that certain, I think one argument was there that you can promote yourself that how different you are. you know, and being ethical can distinguish you from basically other thing. So you can, I think, talk about there are various corporations that display like we are using 100% recycled water, or we are having zero carbon footprint, you know, at the organization level, or they will be displaying that we don't employ child labor, you know, and that is why they will have different symbols to tell you that yes, we don't believe in that the animal cruelty, we don't inflict animal cruelty in our product. So basically all these are a way to tell their customers, you know, that yes, we are ethical and that is how we are distinct, and the people for whom such ethical concerns matter, they will buy your product. You know, that is how you can make yourself distinct. Sir, Pragati is asking, sir, in answer, when to stop this loop? What loop is? Law is important, but ethics is necessary. But law is required, but ethics too, and so on. Now she is totally confused. Hey Bhagwan. Okay, so Pragati, the thing is, have you noted everything? You first noted, then I will solve this doubt. Yes? Yes, speak. Huh? Acha, because of me? Yeah. Because of a stand. Acha. Okay. ये लीजिए. When government rescues banks from such failure, it also at times empower reckless risk-taking with cushion of falling back on government, like happened after. So Abhilasha, you know, that's a great argument. But the thing is, you know, such regulatory steps, you know, at times are governed by political considerations also, and that is why it may lead to such failure. But if regulators are truly acting fairly and everything, then this will not happen. Understood? Abhilasha, understood? I mean, this is what you are telling me is the practical side of it. But in that case, the regulations are not fair. The regulatory body is not fair in doing that. Because in such cases, you know, if suppose they are bailing out certain banks and they are not imposing the corrective measures, then it is wrong. Done? Similar argument is given towards, you know, let's say waiving of farm loan waivers and everything. You know, similar argument is given. So if such decisions are taken only from the perspective of politicization, then it is wrong, of course. Okay, so can you just scroll ahead? The doubt before that, Pragati, I think. Yes. So in answer, I'm not coming in the frame. Later on, we will, you know, take all the photograph together. So in answer, when to stop this loop, Pragati, depends upon the question actually. You know, when I'm giving you this argument that why companies need to act from the perspective of ethics, I am giving you from the argument, from the perspective that the laws, rules and regulation have some limitation with respect to source of ethical guidance, you know. And when you are saying the law is also necessary, you are giving it from the perspective that the societal ethics may be wrong also. Your ethical standards may be sati, you know, dowry and everything. And that is why you require law. So it actually will depend upon the context of the question. So that is where this loop will stop. So when we are talking about ethics, then we are talking about the ethics from the perspective of good things only. But as we have discussed, ethics may be bad also. In the context that collectively society may believe in wrong thing, like, you know, female genital mutilations, like triple talaq, like dowry, you know, then the societal ethics is wrong only. Understood? So in that context, law becomes important. So it is actually contextual. I hope now I'm more clear. Pragati. Okay. So now let us move to, you know, that yes, now we have discussed that there are so many corporate governance obligation on the from the perspective of corporates, but still there are certain issues, you know, and the issues, some of the issues we have already discussed, like employees are not treated fairly, the discrimination in the wage gap that is there, you know, everything, all these things are, and environmental cost is there, you know, everything we have discussed, plastic pollution, electronic waste pollution, you know, the organizations which are not abiding by the regulations. The regulations ensure what? The environment also, because the environmental sanctions or environmental clearances are part of regulation only. Yes, so organizations are not abiding by them. Yes, so all these things are there. And that is, but ultimately at ground level, we see certain ethical issues, just like the ethical issues we discuss in the context of government work culture also, that yes, these are the ideal side, but practically we see a lot of corruption, we see my-bap culture, we see hierarchy becoming too stringent in the way that it hampers team building and everything. Similarly, at ground level, at times companies may undertake huge risk, or different banks that have gone flat because they undertook huge risk. Kingfisher Airlines, another example, because it took huge risk. The risk management was very poor. It became greedy in the context of getting more profit. Then there can be collusion. There can be collusion between auditors and the company executive. I talked about Satyam scam. Yes, in Satyam scam, they inflated the numbers. And when they were showing the numbers, they colluded with the auditors only, that you please show and verify and tell the people that these are your verified numbers. So if such collusion happen, then they are actually posing systematic risk to the company and to the market also. Understood? So collusion is also there. Then promoter-led boards, it also creates a lot of challenges. Who are promoters? Promoter, you understand from the perspective of founders. The people who have founded the company, since they have founded the company, they will have a lot of influence on how the company is being run. It may happen that numerically their stake is less because, they have divested a lot of their stake to the investors. Ye line samajh mein aa rahi hai? Suppose I just founded a company, and to scale and to increase my operation, I need more investment. So suppose I am asking all of you that please give me 2 crore of rupees, and in exchange of 2 crore of rupees, I will be, let's say, giving you 50% of the equity. So now I have only 50% of the equity, and 50% of the equity is held by you. But still, I will be the promoter of this company because I have founded this company, and I will have a lot of influence on how company is run. And that at times creates challenges because, I may become egoistic in how I am managing my company. Because all of you also have 50% stake in the company, all of you may have different perspective that, sir, no, this is not how company should be run. This is how company should be run. And it may create challenges. All of you know about Housing.com, the great company that was there, and it was founded by Rahul Yadav, IIT Bombay alumni. And, he founded this company, and he had his unique way of dealing with the company. And ultimately, he was fired from his own company, because because he raised so much of money, and that is why he did not have majority in the company. And ultimately, he was fired from his own company because of the way he was behaving in the company, because of the way he was steering the company. So suppose, I have divested, let's say, 80% of my company to the investor. All of you are having 80% of my company, I have only 20%. But I'm not managing my company well. Even though I'm promoter, now I have some other perspective that may not align with your perspective. Then what will you do? You will fire me from my own company, because all of you will vote and unanimously fire me that, sir, you should not lead the company anymore. Yes, that is what happened more or less in the context of Housing.com. And that happens because at times there's conflict between promoter and the professionals who are there in the board of director, because they are representative of the investors. Understood? So that is the problem that is there. Another sort of problem is that the promoters, if they are still having significant stake in the company, let's say I have my own company and I'm still having 80% of the stake, and only 20% I have divested. Still 20% is the money of other people, it is not my money. But since I'm having 80% of the stake, I will decide that how this company is run, who should be at the key positions in the company, and that may create problem of nepotism. All of you would like, no sir, even though we are having 20%, we would like that it should be run by this particular technological officer. He is the right person to head this organization as CTO or CEO. But then I will say, no, he's my son-in-law, and that is why he should be CEO and CTO. So it may create problem for that. It may create problem of professional management. So that is the issues there, that succession planning, professionalism, it will become difficult actually. In the context of Tata also it happened, Cyrus Misty, and there was conflict between them. So basically, promoter-led board. So ultimately, things should be done professionally, keeping the best interest of all stakeholders. But at times, promoters, there can be conflict between promoters and the board of director, and it can create a lot of conflict. So these are the ethical issues that are there. Then lack of oversight is there. at times RBI or various regulators which are operating, they may not have done lot of due diligence on how companies are being run, and that can create lot of issues. Understood? Then what are the other ethical issues? In the context of independent director, in board of directors, certain directors are independent directors. Independent directors because the investor, they will of course, the shareholders, they will send their representative on the board, that will speak from their perspective always. But how would you ensure that a board of director will take decisions in the best interest of all stakeholders, and that will ensure environment and society also? Understood or not? Suppose I'm having 100% ownership of my company, then who will stop me from taking the decisions that goes against, let's say, environment? So of course in board of director, if I'm public listed company, I should have some independent director. 1/3 of director should be independent director. Those 1/3 of director will stop me. No, you cannot do this even though you are having lot of stakes in the company. Understood? Understood or not? So that is a job of independent director, because various important decisions require at least 3/4 of votes. 3/4 of vote. You need at least 75% of the votes, and if 1/3 of the directors are independent director, and that is how those independent directors can veto the proposal of any such wrong proposal. ये मैथ समझ में आ रही है आपको? 33% CSAT, basic CSAT. Yes? आ रही है कि नहीं आ रही है? Understood? So basically, usually lot many important decisions are taken by the board. They require 3/4 of, just like constitutional amendment, it requires a special kind of majority. Yes. Similarly, various such votes require 3/4 of majority, and the checks and balances here is that the 1/3 of director should be independent director in the case of public listed company. Checks and balances in the context of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha is that both of them should agree. Both of them should agree on. There is no provision for joint sitting in the context of constitutional amendment. Yes, so that is the checks and balances that has been given there. Here the checks and balances is this, that there should be some independent director who will be taking care that decisions are not such bad. Understood? But there is ethical issue with respect to independent director also. I will give you another name of the independent director. Sambit Patra, all of you know him. He is the BJP spokesperson. And in PSU, who is having the majority of ownership? It's a government only, and he is the independent director, on the board of a PSU. Is he really independent? Because he is the spokesperson of the ruling party, which is having, the government is having the majority of the stake. Because if at all you require independent director to speak, you have to speak against government only, because that is your job. That is why you are there. But if you are their spokesperson only, then why would you speak? Shahja Ilmi, another example, another independent director in the PSUs. So these are the problem of political partisanship. The independent directors are not truly independent, even though they are required to maintain arm's length distance from the owners and the promoters of the company. Still, there should not be any related party transactions between them. Then they should not be related party. Still, they bypass all these laws, by doing different things, and it creates a lot of conflict of interest. And that is why independent directors are not truly independent, and that is a ethical issue. Understood? So that is at ground level that is happening. Because of that, crony capitalism we have just discussed, insider trading, gender discrimination, customers mis-selling of products, labor. All these are basically we have discussed. All these are ethical concerns in the context of the corporate governance, that presently this is the status of corporate governance, that yes, all these arguments are important, but at present this is what the reality is. Understood? So these are the ethical concerns of the corporate, from the corporate governance perspective, status that we discussed, ethical concerns of private organization or corporate governance. So these are the ethical concerns. Understood or not? Now let us discuss a very important act, that is Companies Act. Now, in Companies Act, we have to just broadly understand, the battery is very low, okay. We have to broadly understand that the Companies Act provides for those rules and regulations which ensure that companies govern the best interest of all stakeholders. So let us just see what are the issues that it is addressing. So one of the aspects is that it is mandatory to appoint a women director in all listed companies. So basically, it is talking about representation. So it is addressing that issue that women should not be treated unfairly, in terms of representation. So at least one director should be, women director. Then public listed companies shall have at least 1/3 of the directors as independent director. So that clause will ensure that some sort of checks and balances are there when you are taking some major decision at the board of director level. Understood? And what is the role of independent director? The same thing: fraud preventions and detections, protecting interest of minority shareholders, improving corporate credibility, to monitor the impartial judgment of the company for the interest of investor shareholders. So basically, the same thing only, that it has to ensure that the company is governed in the best interest of all stakeholders. So that is the job of independent directors. Understood? Then another important provision is that audit committee. Majority of the members of the audit committees, including its chairperson, shall be the person with the ability to read and understand the financial statement. So this qualification criteria, has added a checks and balances, because, for example, if I am running my own company and I want my company to be audited, and he is my friend and he does not have this capacity, then I can declare him that he is auditing my company. So basically, by adding this qualification, you are making it much more restrictive, that in terms of skill, at least you should understand that there is a qualified person who is auditing you, and majority of the people should have that qualification. So they have added this qualification. What is the role of audit committee? Of course, recommendation for the appointment and this examination of the financial statement and the auditor's report. Evaluation of internal financial control. What are the internal financial control? Risk management exercises only. That whether the risk management exercise is that only, that by which you will be preventing the fraud. That if you are giving the loan, and these are the criteria that you should fulfill. If you are giving loan more than this much amount, then these are criteria that should be fulfilled, so and so forth. So basically, internal financial control and risk management system, monitoring the end use of funds raised through public offers. For example, Hyundai, it raised public funds through the issue of IPO only. If suppose it has promised you that how it will use the money, suppose it is telling you that it will use the money in terms of, expansion and making new plants, but it uses the money, for example, just to give that money back to the shareholders, original shareholders, then it will be wrong thing only. So the audit committee will actually monitor how the end user of the fund, how they are using the funds, and for the purpose for which they have been raised. Understood? And then there's committee, that is the stakeholder relationship committee, to resolve the conflict between different stakeholders, shareholders and board of directors and their grievances. You can invoke this particular institution when you are, just like, the protection of women from the sexual harassment at workplace, it talks about a cell, an internal complaint committee should be there, to whom a woman may approach if she feels that, she has been harassed. Similarly, so when you are solving such case study, you can always mention that in the context of sexual harassment, the women can approach this particular body under this particular act. Similarly, in the context of corporate governance, some internal conflict is there that you can always discuss, that you can approach stakeholder relationship committee under Companies Act to resolve your grievance. Understood? In a similar way. So basically, these are the various provisions that are promoting sound corporate governance principle. Another very important provision is CSR provision. The provision that you have to spend some money, that is 2% of your average net profit of the last 3 years on CSR activities. So basically, Companies Act, is a broad structure. It provides various direction to the company, that how you can govern your company in the best interest of all stakeholders. It is about making corporate governance much more ethical. Understood? So that is what Company Act is all about. Various important sections we have just discussed. Now talking about corporate social responsibility, until and unless asked that what is the corporate social responsibility, then if the language of the question is so that it is talking about specifically from the perspective of this provision, then you have to take the narrow view of this provision only, that this is what is meant by CSR. But if suppose the question is very broad, CSR makes companies more profitable, then corporate social responsibility is much more wider term than spending 2% of the average net profit in last 3 years. That is what you need to understand. Corporate social responsibility is the responsibility towards society and everything, So it is whatever we have discussed before this, all of that is part of corporate social responsibility only. You should not limit your answer to this. In fact, you can always say that corporation should go beyond their narrow understanding of corporate social responsibility of spending not 2% of this profit. They should go beyond that and think of the corporate social responsibility in a much more comprehensive manner. ये समझ में आया कि नहीं आया? This part, all of you have understood. So basically, this is what you need to understand. The CSR is a much wider term. It is not just limited to this only. All the ethical responsibility and everything, they need to understand as part of CSR only. So whenever you are writing your answer on CSR, you must mention good case studies. So some of the case studies are from Tata Group. They spend 5 to 7% of its profit after tax on CSR activity. It's a very great number. Actually, that much amount of money, even though they are not legally required to do so, they have gone a step ahead and they are doing so much of philanthropic work. They have established tribal cultural centers that showcase the legacy of the tribals in Jharkhand and Odisha. So basically, it is because they are operating in those areas. They are so many mines and minerals they are consuming there. So they are like that. Let us celebrate the legacy of the tribal and their culture. Let us showcase that. So basically, this is part of their CSR. Then Tata Motors Granny Social Welfare Society, it assists employees, women, in making financially independent. They will be conducting various vocational training, in terms of pickers, electrical cables, so that they can become financially independent. Atulya initiative is basically with respect to vocational training of the people with disability. Understood? Mansi initiative is with respect to reduce child and infant mortality. So basically, all these initiatives are from the perspective of the company is going beyond its own economic obligation of serving its customers only and employees only. It is going beyond that. Anyone who is talking about Granny welfare societies is basically having a more extended view of their responsibility, that we are not just responsible for the wages that we are paying to the employees, we should take care of their family also. For example, by making their wives more capable, financially independent. Understood? If we are operating in this environment of tribals, then we should celebrate their legacy. We should propagate their culture. So that is why they have made those tribal cultural center. If we are working in this society, then let us focus towards reducing child and infant mortality. So basically, all I am saying is all these are great examples from the perspective of CSR activities, that the real life case studies that a company has gone beyond what is asked for them. Understood? So this is what you must quote. Another good case studies are Patagonia, that is known for its strong environment cause, and they dedicate a portion of their profit for the environmental causes. Google, we will discuss later that Google also invest a lot of money in the community projects. Many public Wi-Fi projects are sponsored by, in India, they are sponsored by Google only. Railway station, Wi-Fi and everything. So that is their way of doing the CSR activities. Tesla has made all its patents accessible to all the people. So that is their contribution, because they believe that the patent should not be the monopoly of some people. So they have opened this knowledge to various competitors, including their competitors, with respect to electric vehicles and everything. So basically, it is their perspective on CSR activities. So all such great examples are there in which we can see that how corporates should do. They should go beyond what is legally asked for them. That is 2%. They can have the narrow perspective of 2%, and one perspective is letter and spirit of the act. That is basically having a broader view of corporate social responsibility, not just from the perspective of distribution of profit, 2% of the profit, but going much more than that. Not just in economic sense, but having a wider perspective of that, yes, we have far greater responsibility towards the society in which we are operating. Understood? This part understood? So far understood? Any doubt? Online walo, any doubt? Any doubt so far? Please write in the chat box if there is any doubt. Please write. Okay, so now let us move to the next part. That is, I will make you take the photo at the end only, because I need to remove this again and again. Then the next part is, next important part is that how CSR, the provision of CSR, the Companies Act, how it has not helped. What are the issues that are there in the implementation of CSR? Because that is the another question that is there. That is the another question that is there. So one of the biggest problem is that various corporations view it as an additional corporate tax. That's they are like that you are already taking so many taxes from us. Why are you burdening us with another 2% of our profit that we have to spend on such activity. It is like another cost to us. So their perspective is that you are burdening us with additional tax. It is not having any economic value us. That is their perspective. So that is the issue. Many of the companies, they use CSR activities as for the agenda of the publicity. That is basically violating the principle of Kant. Doing charity for the sake of charity rather than doing charity for publicity or for the respect of the moral law. That is there. Then skewed pattern of expenditure. Skewed pattern of expenditure means that since the CSR provision is applicable, uniformly applicable to all the companies operating above that particular threshold, then there is a lot of skewed expenditure. That most of the expenditure in a certain type of activities only. The activities which are much more easy to do. For example, let's say construction of toilet. I'm just giving you an example. Let's say examples that, so the schools, for another example is school, that construction of schools in some, peri-urban area or something like that. So basically, there is a skewed pattern of expenditure, even though the needs of the societies are diversified, still the pattern of the expenditure is that they are doing what is easy for them. Understood? मैं एक बहुत क्रूड एग्जांपल देके समझाता हूँ. सपोज I under this obligation I have to disburse 2 crore of rupees. Then I will say, अरे यार इसको ना बस आप वो कर दो, आप डोनेट कर दो कैसे भी. मैं एक लंगर का, although it may not account for CSR, just giving you very crude example that I will have langar for 2 crore of rupees and that burden is off from me. Another perspective is, since I have 2 crore of rupees, what can I do that will help sustainably, the people in this area? And for that, I need to ask them that what is it that you want? Perhaps they will say that we do not have any training center. So if I just can invest those whatever amount is there, that amount in training center, then that will help them, in the long run. That will be having lot of sustainable perspective. Rather than just taking this burden off my chest, that let us just distribute this money anyhow. So that is the perception, that is how we should just make this perception broader towards CSR, that we can do a lot more with the CSR fund in terms of their scope and application, rather than having very narrow perspective and having this skewed pattern of expenditure, that this is what we should do. And that is why there is a lot of duplication of activities. For example, 3-4 companies are operating in an area, then what can happen? Perhaps all of them are constructing toilets only. So there can be duplication of activities, because there are companies which are, NGOs which are specializing in toilet construction only. So that is why they are distributing their money in that only. Understood? Another thing is, when they are doing that expenditure, ideally they should ask the society that what is it that you want. But instead of that, companies do what is easy for them to do. Because they need to somehow just disburse that money. Understood? So lack of people participation in the CSR project is another concern that is there. Another concern is that since the companies, they may not have skill in terms of the real skill in terms of executing the various CSR projects. Suppose the Wajiram and Ravi, it has skill in the education only. But suppose it wants to do the CSR activity in the context of healthcare. It does not have any skill, any capacity with respect to that. So what it will do? It will look for the NGO or an entity that specializes in the healthcare. That is what it will do. So the problem is there also, that such well-meaning NGO, that too, who are credible and that too who work in the remote areas, are very few. Most of the NGOs are urban and peri-urban phenomenon. That is the problem that is there with the NGO distribution. NGOs are not there where they should be. That is in remote areas. So basically CSR funds will never reach the remote areas, because there are not enough implementation agencies, because through implementation agencies only the companies can distribute the money, because they do not have the capacity to do those products directly. Understood? So that is there. Then various entities, NGOs and everything, they have lack of transparency. So basically there are not enough credible NGO partner, that ensure that the money is truly spent for the purpose for which they have got the money. So that is another ethical issue. Perhaps NGO will take 5 crore of rupees and will show you on the paper that you have spent 5 crore of rupees, and in essence they will spend only 1 crore of rupees. 4 crore is gone to the pocket only. Corruption in NGOs, that is another issue. So these are the concerns that are there. Narrow perception towards CSR activities. They are more donation driven. That is basically they are looking for one time. We have to take off. We have to take this off from our chest. That this is what we should spend, rather than having a more sustainable perspective that that we can do a lot more with the same kind of money. Understood? So that is the perception of CSR. The issues of CSR that is there. Then let us discuss another thing, that if you are just asked that issues and challenges of CSR, one thing that you must always write in your conclusion is that CSR should be viewed much more than legal compliance. CSR means wider responsibility. CSR means that you should abide by the spirit of the act and not just letter of the act. In your notes that I will be giving you, Injeti Srinivasan committee is there. Injeti Srinivasan committee is there, which has recommended that what should be done to improve the CSR. And one of the recommendation is that the company should be allowed to carry forward the money to the next year in terms of whatever money they are not able to spend. Because of the requirement of a spend, at times they just go with respect to the donation driven, that we have to just take this off from our chest, rather than, because planning of that expenditure of that money will require some efforts. So some of the recommendation they will give in your notes, that how you can improve the CSR activities. Understood? Okay, then the corporate governance is over. Okay, so you may now please note it. From where? From issues. From this part? Issues only, na? Yes. Please note it. Yes, Kanak, we can say that we need to have outcome perspective when we are doing the CSR rather than outlay perspective. Yes, commerce without morality is a sin. That's very good. Business without principle. All these things you can write. Done? 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 Sir, please explain crony capitalism once more. अरे भाई कितनी बार समझाएंगे? उदित जी, अभी आई थिंक कल या परसों की क्लास में मैंने समझाया क्रोनी कैपिटलिज्म. आप रिवाइज नहीं करते हो यार, ये गलत बात है आपकी. नो, ये आपको याद है मैंने ऐसा कुछ बोला था, ए पॉलिटिकल पार्टी बी, एक कंपनी ए एंड ए. आपको याद है क्या? नहीं, पहले तो ये बताओ. उदित जी, शर्मा जी, बताइए. डू यू रिमेंबर दिस एग्जाम्पल? ए पॉलिटिकल पार्टी बी इज कंटेस्टिंग इलेक्शन, a private company A is giving some money to fund election through electoral bonds. Do you remember this example or not? Shubham, please. Shubham, doubt. No, sir. That is why you are asking this question. You are innocent, just like too innocent. I've got so many innocent people, students this time. When are you giving your first attempt? When are you giving your first attempt? This year or next year? Perhaps I am not teaching you well enough crony capitalism that you are not getting it. Next year only. Okay. Please be attentive in the class. I have repeated so many times crony capitalism. I can repeat it another time, there is no issue, but you should also be sincere. So crony capitalism is basically, a political party is contesting the election and it needs funds, and the corporate organizations, they are providing funds to the political parties, and when that political party comes to the power, it will reward the company, it will reward the company by being favorable to that. that company, by changing the terms and conditions of the tender, contract, and everything, so that the profit rises. So that is crony capitalism. It is wrong because it disturbs level playing field. Understood? Sharma ji, अब समझ में आ गया आपको? Sir, some companies ask their customers to donate money to some particular NGOs through them. Will this come under CSR? I don't think this will come under CSR. They are just, and of course they cannot ask directly, that you have to donate. There is always an option. Of course it is there. Sir, ₹1 donate करना चाहोगे क्या आप? It is there, understood? But I doubt that it is part of CSR. All of you are, done. Whoever asked for the previous slide, done? Please write if it is done. और प्रीवियस करते क्या हैं ये लोग? क्या चल रहा है? तुम्हारा अलग ही लेवल प्रॉब्लम चल रहा है. बंद मत करो भाई, मैंने कहाँ बोला अभी, मैं बात करने दो बच्चों से. कौन कौन को ठंड लग रही? पीछे जाके बैठो सब. मुझे तो गर्मी लगेगी, मैं तो बोल रहा हूँ, तुम तो बैठे हो यहाँ पे. सर सुनाओ, मुजरा करो बैठ के, है ना भाई. मुझे तो बोलते पसीना आ रहा है मुझे. देखो, बंद करवा दो. मेरा कंफर्ट नहीं देखना सर, बंद करो. तो टी शर्टों में क्यों आ रहे हो भाई? विंटर आ गया, कहाँ है तुम्हारे गर्म कपड़े? कौन है, किसको ठंड लग रही है? तो अंदर पहन के आओ कुछ. लक्ष्य कोजी का नाम नहीं सुना तुमने? इतना ऐड आ रहा है उसका, वो पहन के आओ कल से. और किसको ठंड लग रही है? तुम्हें लग रही है? तुम पीछे चलो, पीछे बैठ. पीछे भी ठंड लग रही है. यहाँ पे ग्लोबल वार्मिंग नहीं हो रही, तुम बाहर जाओ. तुम घर से क्लास लो भाई. 1-2 बढ़ा दो इनका ही. वास्तव पसीना आ रहा है मुझे, यू कैन सी दैट. यहाँ पे नहीं देते क्या लोग वेंट? मैं टी शर्ट डाल के आया करूँ, ये भी ठीक है. मैं अपने प्रोग्राम ब्रोचर में लिखवा दूंगा, कपड़े पूरे पहन के आए. जी, विल डिस्कस. डन. क्रोनी कैपिटल नेक्सस की वजह से ही होता है भाई. नेक्सस ओनली. क्रोनी कैपिटलिज्म रिजल्ट ऑफ नेक्सस ओनली. Nexus is a very broad term. Nexus can be with anyone. The corporate, a political party may have nexus with, let's say, another political party. It may not necessarily with the corporations only. So, crony capital is a result of nexus with the corporate entity. क्या कर दें? होम को बंद कर दें. तुमने क्या करवा दिया भाई? कहाँ से जाएंगे अब वापस? तुम हो गया. Done. Lobbying, lobbying depend. I mean, it is more of a difference of form and substance. Pressure groups are also acting as lobbyists only. They are lobbying for themselves. It is not exactly wrong. In democracy, everyone lobby for their own interest. But if it is accompanied by this kind of benefit, such exchange of money, then it becomes crony capitalism. For all that matter, all of you maybe, collectively you may go to the UPSC and lobby for your own interest that remove CSAT. Understood? But if suppose you say, sir, take some money and then remove CSAT, then it is wrong thing. So lobbying may lead to bad thing. It depends upon how you are doing it. Lobbying for your own interest, People do it all the time. It is not wrong also. In democracy, you are supposed to advocate for your interest. But if you are offering undue, money for that and such kind of thing, then it is wrong. Understood? Please provide some technique to get rid of the unusual sleepiness. You are feeling sleepy in my class? Don't attend my class online. Sleepiness, I think, is more. If I think you must be taking a lot of carbs. Then just reduce the intake of that. It helps. Electoral bond can be crony capitalism. It can lead to crony capitalism. We are not saying that directly, but it can lead to crony capitalism. Yes, you can talk about that framework. Yes, Arshit. If you have heavy meals and everything, then you will feel drowsy only. So reduce the intake. Conclusion to be written for CSR is that CSR is ethical responsibility. It actually help you, economically also, and we should have broader perspective of CSR much more than what is asked of us in the letter. We should go for the spirit, and that is much, much broader. Just like law and ethics, that law is minimum morality. So CSR provision of Companies Act is the minimum morality, but ethics is the maximum. Understood? हो गया? Who sent me my picture on the Telegram? Done? Not eating anything yet. अरे भाई मैं तो यूजुअली बोल रहा हूँ, बिकॉज दैट इज व्हाट पीपल शुड डू. दे कार्ब रिड्यूस करो, एक्सरसाइज करो, यही सब करो, नींद पूरी लो एक बार में. कोई डॉक्टर है ना यहाँ पे? कौन है डॉक्टर साहब? बताइए, क्या नींद ज़्यादा आती है तो क्या करें? प्यार कर लो. आई एम नॉट रिकमेंडिंग. बोलो क्या करें, एडवाइस देनी है उनको. इट इज बिहेवियरल इश्यू. नींद ज्यादा आना है बिहेवियरल इश्यू. क्या बात कर रहे हो? लो, अगर बीपी लो होता है तो नींद आती है. तो हो सकता है उनका बीपी लो होता हो, तो ये बोलो उनको. बेकार डॉक्टर हो भाई आप. कतई कब हुआ आपका MBBS? फिजिकल. देखो ये तो आंसर लिख रहे हैं ये. ऐसे बोलो ना सर, इट कैन बी बिकॉज ऑफ मैनी इश्यूज, वन ऑफ द इश्यूज बीपी, अनदर इश्यूज. ऐसे आंसर आने चाहिए. यही आंसर देना फिर UPSC में. इलेक्ट्रोलाइट्स, मल्टीविटामिन्स एंड प्रोटीन डाइट. ऑनलाइन आ गया रिकमेंडेशन. ये खुशी जी पैसे बचा रही है हमने डॉक्टर कंसल्टेशन के, और कुछ नहीं है यहाँ पूछ के. डन. डाटा इंफॉर्मेशन आप प्राइवेसी के रिस्पेक्ट से लिख सकते हो शुभम. प्राइवेसी, पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ प्राइवेसी. तो प्राइवेसी किसी की तो होगी ना, कस्टमर्स की होगी, उनका डाटा होगा, एम्प्लॉयज की भी होगी. उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में यू कैन राइट. यस, ज्योग्राफिकल डिस्पैरिटी विल बी पार्ट ऑफ इश्यू ऑफ CSR. आई थिंक वो लिखा भी हुआ है. Non-availability of well-organized NGOs, especially in the remote and rural areas. So this point is this: take more fiber, less carbs. Okay. Stand up is best solution and cup of coffee. So खड़े होके पढ़ाई कर रहे हैं ये भी ठीक है. Okay, so हो गया यहाँ तक. So let us. कोई बोल रहा है आप नहाया करो. ओके, ये होम्योपैथी के डॉक्टर हैं जिन्होंने बोला मुझे लग रहा है। ओके, CSR टाटा से पहली वाली स्लाइड, ड्रिंक एडिक्वेट वाटर एंड सम माइल्ड ब्रीदिंग एक्सरसाइज एंड ऑल्सो रिड्यूस स्क्रीन टाइम। आप भी डॉक्टर हैं क्या? डॉक्टरों के लिए मेरी ये कौन सी स्लाइड बोल रहे हैं? CSR टाटा से पहली वाली स्लाइड, CSR टाटा से पहली वाली स्लाइड ये रही। इससे नेक्स्ट वाली, अच्छा, ये ऑनलाइन वाले पूरी फुर्सत में बैठ के देखते हैं, मेरे ख्याल से निकल जाएगा तो क्या बोल देंगे, सर वो वाली दिखा दो दोबारा से। डन। Okay, so all of you have now understood corporate governance? Yes, and all of you have understood that we have to see all these things from various perspectives. You know, it is important that we have to see it from various perspectives, and our perspective has to be broad when we are discussing the case studies of corporate. And it is very, very simple: regulator, competitors, everything. Understood? So when I was interviewing Arjun Gupta, rank 32 this year, so he told me, I asked him a very specific example. I met him in NP also, and I asked him that how did the course benefit you? And he gave this example of corporate governance only. That even though, sir, he was in IPS already, 226 or 228 rank, something like that. And he told me that, sir, until that, I did not know that I can think from so many perspectives in the context of corporate governance. Just by understanding that, these are the obligations for different people. Now I got the structure, and when I was writing the case study, it was very clear to me that how many stakeholders to include. In section A answers also, I could have various perspectives. So I'm sure that clarity all of you would have by now in terms of that the corporate governance is not just about shareholders and customers. There are many people, many stakeholders which are involved, and we should be fair to all of them. Understood? So now let us move to very, very important topic, that is ethics in international relations. So before we discuss that, there is one saying that is there. I think we have discussed that. The context is that there is no place for principle in politics. People say that if you are in politics, your only job is to stay in power. I am not saying that. It is a perspective that is there, and we are discussing ethics in IR in the context of that. That is what you need to understand. Okay, just like ethics and efficiency don't go hand in hand. Just like there is a form of good corruption also, so small amount of bribe should be given. So that is how you will be asked the question, and critically analyze. So to answer that question, you should not just write the negative side of it, and basically you should acknowledge the context of that question to tell the examiner that you know the holistic perspective. Understood? So in this context also, you should know the perspective of the people who advocate that there is no place for ethics or principles in the case of politics, because politics is about principles. So Machiavelli is someone, a great thinker, and he advocate that ethics, morality, everything, they do not matter when you are dealing with governance or when you are dealing with power politics. Everything that matters is a survival, and that means that you must hold on to the power, and end means, end matters a lot and not the means. And basically it is saying that you should worry about capturing and maintaining power for as long as possible, and that is the true perspective of politics. He is not defining politics in the context of serving people. He is defining politics in the context of power, that we should get power, and irrespective of the means, we should get the power. And there are people who believe in him. He's not alone. There are people who believe in him. So let us understand his perspective. The perspective is that, no, we should deal with the world as it is rather than how it should be. Because the world as it is means that we should deal with the money power, the muscle power, everything that is there on as it is basis. Usually we will say that there should not be the role of money power, there should not be the role of muscle power. That is what we should say. But in reality, if you have to contest an election, then as per him, you have to deal with the world as it is. So basically, if you are not using money power in this context, then you do not have chance to actually win the election. So as per him, you are wrong. So you should deal with the world as it is. You should be more practical rather than more theoretical and idealist. That is what he is saying. And that is why the central goal of a ruler is to maintain and increase the power. That is what it is there, and and justifies the means and practical realities of the politics and the need for leaders to adapt their strategies to the complexity of the political landscape. So basically, he is talking about that all of you should deal with the world as it is. You should focus on increasing and maintaining power, and for that, whatever you have to do is right. It is fair. So that is what Machiavelli ethics, believes in. Another thinker is Kautilya, who also believe in similar thing. He has, propounded various methods, similar method, spies, Vishkanya and everything. Basically, you have to, if it requires, then you may have to kill people also to capture power. So basically, all these group of people is believing in the practical realism. They are realist in nature. They are not idealist in nature. They believe in they believe in practical aspect rather than theoretical aspect. And it is to say that they have certain believers also. It is not the case that all the people are idealists. In fact, most of the people are realist only, and that is what they are doing. If we talk about Bismarck, Bismarck is a great example of that. That he said that the great questions of the day will not be settled by the means of speeches and majority. Speech and majority what? Democracy or non-violent means. That is what he is saying, that great questions of the day will not be settled by the means of speeches, that is non-violent means, and majority, that is democracy, but by iron and blood. What is the policy of iron and blood? Basically the policy of war. That is the policy of war. That is basically the policy of violent action. So that is what he is believing. So when he strove for unification of Germany, he believed in that. How many of you have gone through unification of Germany? कितने लोगों ने एक बार भी नहीं सुना unification of Germany? एक बार भी नहीं सुना. Okay, then all of you will understand this example. Then, so he went for the unification of Germany in the context of policy of iron and blood only. That no, we cannot perhaps unify the Germany through diplomacy only and through debate, discussion and democratic means only. We have to use the policy of iron and blood. So basically his perspective was very much close to Machiavelli ethics only. And this is basically being real, very real. Another example of Donald Trump, he would say that climate change is not real. It is a hoax. And he will say that and he will take action accordingly because he just does not believe in it. Understood? So basically he's living in a real world, and the real world is if he recognizes climate change and associated climate change responsibilities, then then the USA will have to pay for the historical responsibilities. Then what is the best way? Best way is to deny it. There is no climate change. Everything is in your mind only. So he believes in being practical and real, that we don't need to pay actually, So that is what. So basically all these people come from that school of thought that believes in, yes, realist part. And in the context of India, misuse of anti-defection law, money power, muscle power, misuse of, let's say, the speaker's power in the context of money bill, governor's position, all these are example of how principles are not followed in politics. All these are example of that only. So if you start your answer with respect to this quotation that there is no place for principle in politics, that is what you need to argue. You can quote the thinkers like Kautilya and Machiavelli, and you can quote the Bismarck, you can quote Trump, you can quote, these real issues where all these, all these things have happened, in India. Understood? So basically, politics, there may not be any place for principle. This is what these people are saying and believing and doing. Understood? Yes, power comes from the barrel of the gun. Mao said that. So basically the same thing. All of them believe in that the politics of principle is not there. It does not have any utility. Understood? So when you are answering that, then this is a perspective that you need to write. But of course, this is not what you should agree on when you are writing the answer. Shreya ji, very important line I just said. You should not agree. with whatever we have discussed. It is just one side of the debate, and it should be a part of your answer. Of course, you have to talk about politics with principle, because it is a sin. Politics without principle is a sin. That is what you have been writing in your entire ethics paper. So that is what you need to argue. Now let us discuss in this context that although many of these people believe, although in reality the principles are not followed in politics, especially in the context of international affairs, because there every nation wants to increase their influence, every nation wants to increase their power. Now let us understand that how exactly, principles are relevant in the context of international relations. Understood? So let us just see that why in the context of international relations, why we should be ethical, why we should follow ethical principle. So in international relations, people will say that, all we have to be accountable is for our people. India may say that we have to be accountable for Indian people only, because these people have voted us to power. And when we are taking the decision, we have to think for national interest first. Understood? So if we truly believe in that, the national interest first, that may create a lot of conflict, because ultimately national interest first doctrine may lead to the situation where nations are only viewing at the things in a very narrow manner, and they are simply oblivious of their ethical responsibilities. For example, USA withdrawing from the Paris climate deal because it was taking action as per their own version of national interest, make America great again, that is something like that. So basically that is what he's doing. So now we have to argue that a nation's interest lies in the collective interest. That is what we will be arguing, that how it will be beneficial for the nations to be ethical rather than suffering from, rather than taking action very individualistically in nature. That is what we need to argue, because if we can argue that, then we will justify that there is place for principle in politics in the context of IR. Understood? So see, one of the aspects is that the problem is global in nature. We are talking about climate change and global warming. Not any nation can tackle it by itself. Is it possible? Can India tackle the problem of climate change alone? Can any nation, even USA, can tackle the problem of ozone layer depletion alone? So can any nation tackle the problem of terrorism alone, cyber attacks alone, pandemic like COVID-19 alone? So basically there are certain problems that are there, and because of that the nature of the problem is that that they are global in nature. No single nation can tackle them individually. And what does it mean? It means that all the nations have collective responsibility towards those problems. In the context of India, the people of Punjab and Haryana cannot say that the air pollution is not our problem, it is the problem of Delhi. Because they have shared responsibility in that. Understood? So in the similar way, at global level, now we are saying that the environmental concern, or there are various problems, terrorism and everything, that the people will not be able to actually solve themselves alone. Nations will not be able to solve them. I will give you the example of success of Montreal Protocol. It is a great case study of how international cooperation, what international cooperation can actually achieve. Yes or no? Because it is one of the most successful international treaty that has been signed and executed, and we were able to reverse the ozone layer depletion. That was only possible because collectively all the nations believed in it, and then acted towards it. No nation alone can curb the ozone layer depletion. So that is a great case study for that, and that is what is required, that we have to think at collective level. That we have to think from collective level. I will give you another example. There is a lot of disparity at global level also. Certain nations have a lot of money and certain nations are just poor. So if the nations, who are rich, if they just simply think that, the problems in the poorer nations are not our responsibility, then will it suffice? So if they truly think that, then again, they are not truly thinking about their own self-interest also. For example, I will give you the example of India. If India only think that whatever is happening in Middle East, in the context of poor country, whatever is happening in African countries, is not our concern, and we should not help. India being the pharmaceutical capital of the world, it is not helping those countries. Then what will happen? India will face the burden of various infectious diseases which are sourced from those countries, because it is better to control those diseases there rather than to control them here in our country when we get them here. Understood or not? So we must invest in the healthcare facilities in those poorer countries, because ultimately it will bite us also. And that is why various European countries, they are helping the poor African countries, because if they don't help them, then they will have a lot of refugee problem at their borders. They will simply cross the Mediterranean Sea and land up on their borders. So perhaps they are thinking it is better to solve this problem at the source level than when they come at our borders, because they will simply, venture into our borders through various illegal routes. So it is better that we solve it there only, that we help them. So that is what makes it an ethical obligation, and it has economic implications also, that you take care of the people in need or the countries in need. And that is why you should not think from a very narrow perspective, because if you are truly thinking from a narrow perspective, then you are not even being rational. Because if you have a broader perspective, you will understand that if you are helping the country, then you are helping you only in the long run. That if you are having a broader perspective, then it is you who is helping them it is you who is helping yourself only in the long run. Terrorism and everything that we have discussed. Then, there is a wider disparity that is there in the context of development and military capabilities. One thing that all of us can agree is that all the countries, they are having different military capabilities. And when countries are there will always be conflict. Can we imagine a scenario in which we are not having any conflict? No, it is a very theoretical scenario. So there will always be conflict. So if we are resolving the conflicts between the nation just on the basis of military capabilities, then what will happen? Matasya law will be there. Anarchy will be there. The bigger nation will always subjugate over smaller nation. So basically might is right will be there. So do we want that kind of world in which might is right? Because if might is right is there, then colonialism will again be there. Neo-imperialism will again be there. Understood or not? So all these problems will always be there. That is what we need to understand. So to prevent that, we need some rule-based order. Some rule-based order in which people are believing in the peaceful resolution of the conflict. And if we truly want that such conflict should be resolved peacefully, then we should abide by those regulations, even though they are against us. Because a nation which is operating from the narrow perspective of self-interest will never abide by such decisions. I will give you the example of land boundary agreement between India and Bangladesh. There was a dispute between India and Bangladesh over various conclaves. Now both countries abided by the award of the tribunal. They abided by that yes, we agreed, and then there were exchange of conclaves. We also gave, some land to the Bangladesh and got some land in return also. And we resolved that dispute. If India and Bangladesh, if India had not accepted the award, how can we part with some part of our land? It is anti-national. Our people will not agree to this. Then what will happen? There will be conflict between India and Bangladesh, and military capability is very, very different, and might is right will be there. If we believe in that, then there is boundary issue with China also. Of course, there is boundary issue with China also. So the point is that for our sake only, we should believe that we should not believe in might is right, and such a conflict should be resolved peacefully only, and that will require some rule. The term you will always find in the diplomacy, rule-based order. This is what is meant by rule-based order, that all of you are abiding by something that can be greater than your self-narrow political interest, national interest. Understood? And that is why peaceful conflict resolution should be there, diplomacy. Yes, and that is what will make it an ethical obligation on you. Then another term is that overarching effective legal sanctions are not comparable with the national laws. So basically, suppose we have to tackle terrorism. And if we are tackling terrorism, then the countries will say that, look, we have our own domestic law on terrorism. Why we need a superarching law in the form of international treaty? Because international treaty, if it is binding on all the people, then what it will do? What it will do? That people have to, amend their domestic laws accordingly. They have to align their domestic laws as per the international treaty. Yes, that is what that will happen. But a nation will say that no, our law is supreme. We will not hear any international law. Then what will happen? Can we rely on the domestic law of Pakistan against terrorism? That Pakistan will say that there is no law above our law. This is what that will happen. So basically, that is what it is saying, that overarching effective legal sanctions are not exactly comparable with national laws because nations may have conflict of interest. A country like, let's say, China or Afghanistan would not perhaps believe in Universal Declaration of Human Rights. A country like Pakistan will not believe in the definition of terrorism, for example. So that is why you need something that is operating at global level, at overarching level, that is above national interest, above national law. And that is what you should also believe in. And it is ethically imperative to do that. Understood? That is what you need to understand. And that is why we have Financial Action Task Force. Often it put Pakistan on blacklist, grey list. And accordingly, it put various sanctions on Pakistan to reduce terrorism financing and the use of black money to finance terrorist activities. Those sanctions are there. Can we imagine that kind of sanction from Pakistan domestically? No. So we require an international law that is above domestic law. So basically, every nation has to subjugate some part of their rule making to this international law. Understood? Similarly, you talk about the economic trade. Now, when we are dealing with economic trade, a country like India may have their interest, in service sector. That in service sector, we should get favorable terms. Our visas, we should not have many restrictions on visas and everything because we are exporting services. Yes, perhaps we would believe that our goods should not encounter difficulties in terms of when they are entering European Union countries in the name of sanitary and phytosanitary measures. And on the other hand, we would want that we should not also get dumping of goods by other country like China, because it has large manufacturing base, then it can simply dump various goods in our country and thereby throttling our manufacturing growth. That is what also we would not want. We would also not want opening of our agriculture to such practices because it will threaten our goods and our agricultural goods and farmers. Can you see that at some time we want more global trade with respect to service sector and sometimes we want lesser agricultural trade? The similar things are different for USA and developed country. They want more manufacturing trade and agricultural trade, but lesser of service trade. Understood? So there should be some body that will regulate these different interests, because ultimately you have to align with something for trade to flourish. You have to have some rules by which all the people should abide. Understood or not? You have to have some rules by which all the people should abide. And that is what you must believe in. And that will mean that you have to at times give in with respect to your demand, because some of your other demands are respected. And that is why any nation has to think beyond itself if it truly wants its trade to flourish. Because for trade basically means, that you are give and take only. And that is why you have to go beyond national interest and think at the global level at times. So what we got? So of course, we aligned with the WTO agreement, and that is why we have been able to impose anti-dumping duties because it is in compliance with the WTO provisions that we can always impose anti-dumping duty against the Chinese goods if it is threatening our domestic industry. At the same time, we had to change our patent law to align with the TRIPS provision. We went from process patent to product patent, because it offers larger degree of patent, larger degree of intellectual property right, protection. And that is where we also give in to the international, other international nations. Understood? Because USA, it wants more IPR protection. So we had to give in. So that is, for that to happen, this give and take to happen, you require some independent multilateral institutions which will frame these laws. Because otherwise, who will frame the law? Our country will say that no, we don't want any TRIPS or anything like that. Our law will operate. Pakistan will say we want. So you need some other body that will take care of the different interests and will devise fair rules of trade, because only when you have fair rules of trade, trade will flourish. Because otherwise, nations under the garb of customs and so many barriers, they can always protect themselves, and that will throttle the trade, overall trade. Understood? So that is why WTO is there. So basically, it is about that we are submitting our sovereignty in a way, that yes, we will change our patent, our IPR rights to comply with your provision. So basically, we are going beyond our national interest when we are doing that narrowly. Understood? So far understood? So now we are giving the argument, just to summarize, that why we have to go beyond national interest at times. Understood? Perceived national interest at times. Then the rule of law, accountability, it is there. A nation cannot say that, that I am sovereign. Afghanistan and all these people, they are indulging something that is human right violation on a gross level, genocide, and they are killing their own people. They are using chemical weapon against their own people, for example. Then they cannot say that it is our internal matter. It is our they cannot say that. They must be held accountable for that. And that is why, we heard UNSC, it imposed comprehensive sanctions on Iraq after invasion on Kuwait. It imposed, African Union imposed sanctions on Mali following a military coup. So basically, if any such broad democratic governance principles are violated, then there has to be some sort of accountability and punishment mechanism. And those punishment mechanisms will only operate when there is something bigger than the nation. Because only that can inflict punishment on the nations. Understood? And we need that, don't we? We need that. Otherwise, there will be genocide. No, genocide, all of you may be saying, sir, how can there be genocide in one own country? Yes, it can be there. For example, any autocratic ruler is there and it wants to just continue its power for long. What it will do? It will suppress the minorities. It will kill the minority for all that matter. So we need some alternative bodies, that will ensure that it is not there. Understood? Then protection of human rights, the same thing, that even though the territorial boundaries are there, still the human rights are same only because all of us are humans. Understood? All of us are human. That is why we must concede with respect to that. And then, that is what we have discussed earlier, that we have diverse national interest, and since national interests are diverse, it is important that there should be some mechanism that ensure the balance between sovereignty and greater international concern. I give you the example, for example, debt trade diplomacy of China, what it has led to. It has made the economy debt ridden, and because of that debt, it has been able to extract the kind of concessions from their countries which otherwise they will not give to the China. For example, access to their airport and port and everything. So that is actually a wrong practice. There should be some regulation with respect to that. So it is part of that how to manage, how to ensure that you are respecting other countries' culture. For all that matter, all these Western countries may say that this is the right way to do thing, and all your country, all your individual culture is bad culture actually, and you should change that. But ultimately, cultural relativism is there. What does this mean? It means that we should respect every culture, and we should try to understand the culture from their own perspective. We have discussed this concept. Understood? So basically, the aspect of cultural relativism, mutual respect and tolerance ask every nation to respect other nations also. Because otherwise, all these developed countries, what they will do, that we have this white man burden to civilize you. And for that, you should not wear lungi, dhoti, whatever traditional clothing is there, and you should be dressed like us only all the time. So basically, in the name of civilization, they will do that. They will kill our culture. So we need international bodies that will protect and celebrate our culture. Understood? So I'll give you the example of, the Nagoya Protocol of access and benefit sharing. It is actually basically, protecting the rights of indigenous communities. Because since the tribal communities, they have lot of traditional heritage in the context of knowledge. And when they have this traditional heritage, they would like that, that should not be usurped by the Western nations or the MNCs. So their rights are also respected. Any commercial activities out of, you are making out of their traditional knowledge, then they have right of access and benefit sharing. That economic benefit should be shared with them. Understood? So that is international obligation on every country now to promote and protect the indigenous communities' rights. Otherwise, what will happen? Because the MNC, they are far, far more powerful. They will make all these legal instruments, and make them sign those instruments because a lot of asymmetry is there. So those agreements are there to prevent that. And since there is a lot of diversity in national interest and culture, we need certain common minimum agreement that yes, that is how we should operate together, at world level. So FDG goals are example of that only. That yes, all of us have agreed that we should end poverty, end hunger, end gender inequality. Now Taliban cannot say no. Our culture demands gender inequality. It is wrong. All of us have agreed that we should end poverty, end hunger and everything. So it is a common minimum agreement that is how together we should operate. And this is something that is higher than, what you are doing at your domestic level. Then strengthening of international organization, because you need empires. If you have international law, you need international empires to enforce those laws. And that is why strengthening of international organization is also an ethical imperative. And that is why UNSC reforms, there is a demand. Because until UNSC is reformed, there will always be conflicts. There is a question in history that League of Nations failed to ensure that the Second World War is not there. Why it failed to ensure that? Because the internal structure of League of Nations was not ethical. It was distorted. And that is why it failed to ensure peace in the long run. UN was much more reformed body, but still now also we have again see so many conflicts. Why? Because UNSC again is a very skewed body. It is not a democratic body. It vetoes various things. Understood? So that is there. Then ultimately, because of technology and globalization, we cannot remain aloof. Because of technology and globalization, no country can say, no, I will take care of myself. Can India, were India was ever in a position, that no, we don't care about COVID because COVID is not here and we can simply seal our borders. We got COVID ultimately. We had to cooperate with the world. In the age of globalization, it is not just possible that you can remain aloof. So that is why, it is said that you have to think globally even though you have to act locally. Ultimately, your decisions will be, will operate at local level only. India's operations, India's law will operate at local level only. They will not be applicable, for example, in USA. So, yes, we have to act locally only, but we have to think globally only. And that means we have to go beyond our national interest. When I'm saying think globally, I'm saying think beyond the narrow Indian national interest. When I'm saying think globally, then it means Trump has to go beyond thinking, the narrow national interest. So that perspective is this, that in the age of technology and globalization, no country is actually, aloof. And that is why you should not think in a very atomic fashion or individualistic fashion. UNESCO is a great example of that, the cultural celebration of cultural relativism and that. Yes? So you first note this and then we will discuss ahead. Now he has become president again. Interesting time ahead. Whenever you are answering a question, try to understand the context of the question. Don't simply say, no, we need principle in politics. And if your entire answer is that only, then you are not reflecting that you know this context also, that yes, there is people who believe in that. Of course, it should not be the major part of the answer, but it is some part of the answer. How much part? It will depend upon the question, exactly. Understood, everyone? Noted, everyone? UNESCO is Nagoya Protocol, access and benefit sharing is an example of that. Divya, please wait for the section answer writing. Done? Also, being ethical helps you in terms of getting soft power also. Soft power, basically, I think we have discussed the NSG waiver and everything. Yes, because we were held to be responsible nuclear citizen, that is why we got the waiver. The Korean War, the kind of role we played. We have discussed that, all these things. Yes. So that is a perspective with respect to international level, that how being ethical helps you, in getting power. Soft power is also a form of power only. It is not hard power, it is soft power. It is about the legitimacy. Because in international affairs, nations compete for legitimacy also. That what they are doing is legitimate. What they are doing is credible. All those mafias, mafias in India, all those mafias will always have some human face also. If they are all those mafias who are doing everything, they will indulge and they will do so many humanitarian activities to have that human side of them, so that many people believe, "Arey to Masiha hain, to अच्छे लोग हैं." So if a government catches them, then the people will say government is framing them. Understood? So they will always have this human side. So that is the thing. So similarly, nations, they would want that they should have that human side, that people respect them. They know that those nations should be. Previous slide. Which slide? This slide. Legitimacy. All these people are competing for legitimacy. It's PBF. ये तो पहली स्लाइड है मेरे ख्याल से. अरे भाई इसमें क्या है? अच्छा, किसने पूछा था फ्लोर कौन सा है? टेलीग्राम पे कौन महाशय हैं वो? हाथ खड़ा करो. है फ्लोर हॉल नंबर 1 मैंने लिखा. जब उस पर कोई पूछा सर फ्लोर बता दो, किसने पूछा? बताओ तो सही. अरे बोलो भाई, बोलो. कोई नहीं बोल रहा. मैं भी नंबर पढ़ दूंगा, मैं बता रहा हूँ. हुए जास कुंफू पांडा कौन है भाई? पांडा जी बोलो बोलो, ब्लॉक कर दूंगा अभी. कोई डाउट नहीं, बताऊंगा आगे. बताओ जल्दी, कौन है? आप तो नहीं हो श्रेया? कौन हो? ईमानदारी साथ खड़ा करो ना. बात खड़ा नहीं करोगे. सर इतना बता रहे हो तो फ्लोर ही बता ही दो. यहाँ अच्छा नहीं, आप नहीं हो, आप मान लिया, आप इनोसेंट हो, आप ईमानदार हो. When we were conducting full length test, so I told them that the paper is there in this building, So one student called me. Paper was at 2:30 p.m., something like that, in the previous batch. So 15 minutes before he called me, sir, कौन से रूम में आना है? अरे भाई, that you can ask anybody here. एक ही जगह तो पेपर हो रहा होगा तुम्हारा. You see, ऐसी लग्जरी मत लिया करो. You know, self entitlement. यहीं बताएंगे आपको. मेरे ख्याल से अगर हमें पूछोगे ना, बता देंगे आपको कि क्लास कहाँ हो रही है. Maybe few microsecond it will take. पांडा जी कहाँ हो? वो हंस नहीं रहे होंगे. देखो, that is how you can identify. देखो आसपास, देखो कौन नहीं हंस रहा है. Just see who is not laughing, and then you will identify the person. He has not come, I think. Reply नहीं किया तो बुरा मान गए. Done? So now we have understood that yes, we need to be ethical. You know, it helps us at so many levels, and it is ethical imperative also. Yes, everything. I am remembering another incident, you know. In this, after between prelims and mains only, heavy rush was there and just so busy, you know. So one student, she messaged me around 11 p.m., you know, on the Telegram, and I was answering because in those times, many doubts come, many doubts. So at night, I keep on replying to the doubts. And I told her that, okay, we will discuss that in class tomorrow. And she texted me with the photo of her answers. Sir, meanwhile, if you could just quickly go through my answers. I mean, do I not have any time for myself? You know? So, थोड़ा सा उसको भी समझिए. You know, ठीक है. So now we are discussing. So far we have discussed that why the nation should be ethical. You know, why we should be ethical, and how it will help them, you know, from their own perspective if they remain ethical. You know, how and why they should think beyond for themselves. Understood? But the thing is, what are those ethical principles? When we are talking about, let's say, ethics in public administration, we discussed various ethical standards that are supposed to be followed by public organizations. When we discussed corporate governance, we discussed ethical standards that are supposed to be followed by corporations. Understood or not? Understood? Similarly, in this context, what are those standards that are supposed to be followed by nations when they are dealing with global affairs? Understood? So ethics in international relations are basically those ethical standards that we are supposed to follow when we are dealing with international relation affair. Understood? So there is one cosmopolitan moral theory that is there, you know, and in this cosmopolitan moral theory, you know, it is said that the territorial boundaries are irrelevant when you are dealing with ethical issues. Basically, we cannot say that the women in Africa, women in Afghanistan, just because they are living in a separate territory, you know, they are not of moral concern to us. It should concern us ideally. You know, that is what it is saying. Each person is of equal worth and is subject of moral concern. So that is why cosmopolitan moral theory asks you that territorial boundaries are morally irrelevant. It does not matter whether you are living in India or Pakistan. You have certain degree of entitlement as being humans. You know, so that is the standard that we should follow when we are dealing with international affairs. You know, and that is why genocide is happening. Then we cannot just shut our eyes and think that that is the internal affair of some other countries. It is equally in concern for us also, because every human being is of equal concern. Understood? Similarly, Panchsheel principles are great example. These are the standards that we should follow, that we should respect each other's territorial integrity, there should be mutual non-aggression, we should believe in peaceful coexistence, and we should act, you know, equally, and we should, you know, help each other. Understood? So these are the principles that we should follow when we are dealing with each other. Understood? If we are not following them, then of course we are following unethical practices. Understood? Similarly, there is this UN charter that is there, you know, where it is. In the next page it is. This UN charter is there, you know, just let us just read this UN charter. You know, by the means of UN charter, 191 governments, including the US, has made the following pledges. Pledge not to use the force in the international relation, basically to settle the to settle the disputes by peaceful means only. So basically that is what is required if you want to maintain peace. That all the nations, even though they are allowed to have military strength to actually protect their border and everything, they should not use their military strength to resolve the dispute through violent means. Understood? That is what has been given. Then pledge to refer to a dispute not settled by peaceful means to the Security Council. That we will not settle it amongst ourselves. We will refer them to the judiciary. Here the judiciary is Security Council. Because if we settle it ourselves, then again might is right will happen. Understood? Pledge to use force only when pursuant to the order of Security Council. Only when judiciary gives the order of death penalty or some such order, then only we will use the force. In this case, only if UNSC. So basically, every nation, even though it is having the military strength, still cannot use their military strength to simply settle the dispute. Understood? And we need that. Otherwise, every nation will do that. We need a neutral empire, and pledge to carry out the decision of the Security Council, because ultimately we have to abide by their rules and regulation of the Security Council. There has to be an empire that will ensure that the level playing field is there. Understood? But the only problem is, here the empire is not fair. If it is fair, if suppose Security Council is very fair and representative, then this is a very good structure to ensure that there should not be any long-lasting conflict. Understood or not? So that is what it is saying. Then what are the principles? We should follow the Declaration of Human Rights. We should follow SDG goal. We should believe in cultural relativism. We should believe in democracy, sustainability. Understood? So these are the things that are there. And that is why, even when the nations are pursuing their self-interest, they need legitimacy, because ultimately you are striving for some acceptance also, that nations should believe you. Other nations, what you are saying, they should believe in you. And that is why they are motivated to gain their status. Understood? Legitimacy. And that is why they have to act beyond their self-interest to gain that legitimacy. Understood? So these are the principles that we are supposed to follow, that nations are supposed to follow. Understood? Now this discussion will take at least half an hour. Okay, so I will discuss that tomorrow. So I will discuss some other aspect that we can just finish. Now that we have, you wanted to end the class. She is very disappointed with me. Sir, we have to finish the class just now. Just give me some more time, 5 to 10 minutes, we'll finish this topic. So now we have understood that why we should be ethical. We have understood what are the standards that we are supposed to follow in the context of IR. And now let us just understand that what are the ethical concerns. We already know the ethical concern in the context of bureaucracy. Everything that we have discussed. We already know the ethical concern in the context of corporate governance. Now we should know the ethical concern in the context of IR. And you already know that. We see the military space is there, bioweapons are there, chemical weapons have also been used, and all of them are against international ethics. In the context of environmental concerns, we know that a CBDR is not being implemented properly. US has withdrawn from the Paris Climate Deal, that is dereliction of duty. Yes. It's good governance in the institutions like UNSC membership. It is not fair. All the 5 members, they are following their own narrow interest. They are following their own vested interest. They are supplying the wars and ammunition to the various conflicting parties, and that is actually perpetuating the conflict in those regions. State-sponsored terrorism in the context of Pakistan, we can see it is there. Ideological clashes, and because of that, conflict situation is persisting. Then state-sponsored genocide, it is there. In the case of China, we know that in the Xinjiang province, it is happening. In the Myanmar, it is there. Then USA withdrawing. The neo-colonialism is also there. They are treating Africa like it is their, backdoor. So they are dumping all the waste in the African nations and doing all those things. So it is like neo-colonialism only. Then interference in the internal affair of other nations, unethical trade practices, a trade war and everything that is happening, hegemonistic tendency that you want to acquire the one belt, one road innovation. That is nothing but hegemonistic tendency that you want to acquire and maintain influence in the region. So all these are ethical concerns that are there in the context of international relations that is there. Understood? Because we are not following ethics in international relations. And similarly, another very important topic is in the context of international fundings, that what are the ethical concerns that are there in the context of international funding. When we are talking about funds, we are getting funds from multilateral institutions like IMF, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, JICA, all these things are there to actually give you fund. Similarly, we are also getting funds from at bilateral level. The US is giving some assistance, India is giving some assistance. So basically here, the topic is that what are the ethical issues when you are indulging in such funding pattern? What are the ethical issues? So one important ethical issue is that there can be hidden interest of the donor country. For example, when we are having this Kudankulam nuclear power project, in Tamil Nadu, there were a lot of protests against it, lot of protests against nuclear power plant. So at the face of it, if we look at it, then perhaps we will see environmental activists or the NGOs which are espousing for the environmental concerns. But when IB report came out, and it told us that all those protests were motivated, they were funded by the foreign countries because they wanted to stall the developmental story of our country. So basically, even though at the face of it, they are donating the money, that we are promoting environment because we are very cautious with respect to environment, but their hidden interest is there. So that is a problem that is there with the ethical issue that is there in the context of funding. Then conditional aid is there. Aid conditionality, basically a nation is giving you certain aid. For example, nation A is giving 100 crore of rupees to the nation B, but it is saying that you have to spend 80% of that money, on the companies, that comes from our country. For example, if suppose US is giving, I'm giving you an example, 100 crore rupees for Digital India, then if USA says that 80% of the money has to be given to the companies that have origin in USA, like Google and everything, then it is aid conditionality. Aid conditionality basically ties your hand, because the recipient country, it cannot give the tender to any other country or any other company, even though that is far more cost efficient. So that problem is there. Aid conditionality is another ethical issues. And the World Bank and IMF, they also at times attach various restrictions when they give the funding. IMF, World Bank, they will ask you that you should cut down on your subsidies, you should cut down your fiscal deficit and everything. So in a way, they are restricting the sovereign power of the country. Because ultimately, suppose a ruling party is there and it has come to the power by promising that there will be free education to all the people, and the people have voted that party the power because of that promise. It is democracy only. Ideally, they should implement that. But they are barred by the World Bank and IMF from, let's say, giving the education freely, understood? So basically, in a way, they are curtailing their sovereign power in terms of making decision. So that is nothing but neo-imperialism. Just like in imperialism, the countries, the various colonies, they were barred from taking certain decision in a democratic fashion, in a suo motu manner. Their sovereignty was not respected. Similarly, because of these aid conditionalities, we are having neo-imperialism in the context of IMF and World Bank, and that is why various developing countries, they have formed their own bank. The BRICS nation, they have formed their own bank because of the to have a way around it. Similarly, there is a logistical issue and corruption issue that is there. In Ghana, 85% of the money, do not go to the intended purpose because corruption is there in the donation. So that is another ethical issue that is there. That there is corruption in the funding that is there. Then terror funding. All of you know Jamaat-ud-Dawa? Yes, Jamaat-ud-Dawa. No? Don't know? It is a very famous NGO in the Pakistan. It actually helps so many flood victims, humanitarian initiatives. It does so many things. Also carries out terrorist activities against India. And it gets the funding by showing the humanitarian side to the people outside that this is what we are doing, but then it channels that money to fund terror activities. So basically, NGOs become a front to channel terror activities, so that is ethical issue. In terms of funding, ostensibly done for humanitarian purposes, but is used to divert and to fund terror activity. And that is why foreign contribution in our country with respect to NGOs is heavily regulated. It is regulated, and for rightly so, because those NGOs can be misused to fund terror activities. Understood? Then fuel to war, the side factions. Every country will choose the side factions, the factions which are fighting amongst themselves, and they will fund these factions. And in the name of that, that they align with their cause, ideological cause. And that funding will actually continue the conflict, because otherwise those country will, those factions will never fight for so long if they just don't have the money to fight with. But simply because the countries are involved in ideological clashes and they are supplying arms and ammunition and funds, and that is why that conflict is persisting because of ideological clashes. Then clinical trial, another, usually at the face of it, they will be giving the humanitarian aid that you want faster development of the medicine and everything. But at the hindsight, it is the resource constraint in the domestic country that is there, and because the human labor in those countries is cheaply available, and that is why the humanitarian concerns is there, that you are using humans, as a means. For example, if you go to Africa, there's more likelihood that people will sign whatever you are telling them because they need money. So in poor countries, people will not have lot of checks and balances. They will not have a lot of due diligence before they participate in clinical trial because of illiteracy, because of a lack of awareness. So basically, funding pattern becomes a way in which you are using the people of the poor countries, as a means only. Understood? Surrogacy. All of you know surrogacy. We banned commercial surrogacy because of that only, because the women in our country, because of poverty and so many things, there were commercial surrogacy that was happening, and in a way, it is like renting out womb to other people. So it has ethical aspect. So those are the ethical concerns that are there in the context of international funding. Understood? The topic is, I think, very small only. Work culture we will study tomorrow. So now you can note, just war theory we will discuss tomorrow only. This topic will take a lot of time. From where I should show ethical standards, principles. From here only, I think, cosmopolitan moral theory. Yes, I can read, although you cannot read. Cosmopolitan moral theory. Yes, from here only, or from previous slide. This you have done, I guess. हो गया ना? Done? Oh, sorry. Lost connection, previous slide. भाई अपना इंटरनेट दिखवाओ, क्लास सुनने में तो नहीं हो रहा है. He has copy pasted that. Lost connection. Jamaat ud Dawa, the NGO of Hafiz Saeed. Hafiz Saeed, the great philosopher, philanthropic person. हैं? 500 रुपये देता है stone pelting के लिए. Now you know where to go. Here people are getting only 2 rupees for tweeting. Pakistan is paying good, You can just talk about Cold War politics, for example. They are, the various conflict perpetuated because of ideological flashes that were there. There were various theaters of conflicts that were there. Okay, Shubham. Understood. Done? This you want to take? Done? No. आपको बहुत जल्दी है. आपका अपॉइंटमेंट है क्या 1:30 को? भूख लग रही है, इसलिए आपको नींद नहीं आ रही है. The term is soft power. We will discuss just war theory tomorrow. Done? Done? Where are you from? Maharashtra. You joined recently? You joined recently program? First lecture only. Oh. Tomorrow is what is psychophancy in corporate governance? क्या बोलेंगे भाई साइकोफेंसी को हिंदी में? चेलापंती है? चमचागिरी, मक्खन लगाना, बटरिंग, यस, chamcha. So many synonyms all of you have given. Very good. Okay, so we will discuss work culture tomorrow. Okay, so tomorrow ideally it should be your last class in terms of theories. Okay, we should cover theories and then we should start the mini test discussion after that. No? Okay? I will take a poll for that. Let me see how many people are against that. Okay, and I will be circulating a form, a Google form, I think tonight or tomorrow. In that Google form, please submit the details. I mean, it is mostly for the feedback and whether you will be attending the uncertain discussions online or offline. I need to plan for something, for that. So please submit that. Schedule of the mini test, Monday to Friday, same time, prime time. First 1 hour you will be, first 1 hour you will be writing, last 1.5 hour or 2 hour I will be discussing. So 5:30 to 6:30 you will be writing, 6:30 I will be coming, and 6:30 onward we will be starting the discussion. I will give you the schedule for that. Yes. Okay? Okay, bye-bye.